Hello, everyone. Seeing people jumping into the event. Welcome, welcome. If you have a moment, please share your favorite personal or professional book in the chat box. Not only am I looking for recommendations, but I'm also looking at what some people have top of mind. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. Lean Startup. I have not read that. Thank you for sharing that. And if you're not sure where the chat box is, it should be just on your lower toolbar next to the, kind of near the right side. I'm not sure if you have a share screen icon. What about some of our speakers? Are you guys reading any personal and professional books right now?
I'm always in like 3 or 4 of them.
I just got this one.
I thought you were going to hold up your book.
No. Oh, I can do that too.
There we go.
But yeah, I don't know. I'm sure, Ben, I feel like you've read this.
Yeah, I actually just put it in my giving away pile.
What?
If you see the books behind me, those shelves used to be full, and I've just put 3 bags full of books to give away and donate. I do that every so often.
Well,
You just book dissed your book. It was a book diss.
Trailblazers, I hate you. I mean, no, it was a great book. It had a lot of earmarks. I can tell if I really enjoy a book if it has earmarks in it. If I don't remember the book completely, if I have earmarks, it's good.
That's how all mine are. Earmarked and written in and all kinds of crazy stuff. I'm reading Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's really good.
Yeah,
and I just got that one too.
I rarely recommend a newsletter other than my own. No plug. But James Clear's newsletters are unbelievable. They're incredible. Okay, what else? Stillness is the Key. I haven't read that. Oh, Tomer. Love it. Generation Impact, 7 Habits. That is a staple.
Ben, you're gonna have to make sure you capture this awesome book list.
I'm saving. Actually, guys, a little secret. I'm launching a book club now, and you're giving me all the books I'm going to be using. So thank you. The Art of the Gathering was awesome too. Yeah, the idea that every event needs to have a purpose. Love that. Okay, so people are still rolling in, so I'm just going to give them another minute, and then we will get started on our panel this evening. Thank you all for being here. I'm reading, I haven't shared that. I'm reading, it's not my favorite, but I'm reading right now David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And if you ever want to hear some good interviews, just Google him on your iTunes podcast app, and ton of information just on resilience and mindset. Okay, we are going to move forwards with the event. Thank you everyone for being here. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your focus. Today, we are going to just do a short welcome, some guidelines, go over some guidelines, and we're going to turn it right over to the panelists. So we're getting right into the content. There's going to be some time for your Q&A, and then I'm going to talk about next steps if you want to follow up with the coaches and how you can get maybe involved with LFY events. So for the event, for it to go off without a hitch, I'd love for all of you to please keep your mic muted and video off, please, until the Q&A portion of the evening. It will help the panelists kind of play off their own cues and things like that, and just lead to a greater, better discussion. Please also respect and support your panelists. They are donating your time, so be positive in your remarks towards them if you put remarks in the chats, and also check out their websites and social media platforms and any of the offerings that they have out there. You guys can talk in the chat. If someone says something too that you connect with during the Q&A portion or throughout the event at all, reach out to them, make connections, send them a message, and see if you can actually create a relationship from the event. I think the events are great for learning and growth for yourself, but I think they're even greater, and they're a great opportunity for building connections and relationships with other people. And if they're here, that you guys probably share some similar values. And if you're enjoying the event, post on social media, let the world know. There's my information. You can find me pretty much on any platform as well. It just helps spread the good word. And the more people that are focused on creating connection, learning, and growth for themselves, the better. Do you have any questions? You can throw them in the chat now. Okay, let's get started then. So you probably don't know me. My name is Dr. Benjamin Ritter. I'm a leadership and empowerment coach and founded LFI Consulting about 4 years ago. I care deeply about helping people create a career that they can love. And one of the ways that I live true to my values is hosting these types of events. When I first started in coaching, I was inundated with advertisements for make 6 figures in 6 weeks, in 6 days, in 6 hours, and through on my Facebook profile, on my Instagram page, and my email somehow. And it kind of made me a little frustrated because I was giving a lot of my time to learning about the industry, to making connections, and learning how to be a coach. And it seemed to be that there were a lot of kind of snake oil sellers out there. So I decided that I was going to host a coaching panel of people that I've met that are just rocking it in the coaching world, and have them provide real information about how to rock it yourself. So I'd love to welcome our panelists this evening and give them the opportunity to say a little bit about themselves and what they do. So Corrine, would you like to start?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you again, everybody, for being here and spending your time with us this evening. First of all, my name is Corrine Summers, and above anything else, I am a human who loves and believes in other humans, and I love to see other people succeed, which is probably what landed me in my role as a coach. So I'm a mindfulness and meditation expert, a Reiki master, and wellness coach. And most recently, in the last couple of years of my business, I primarily work with spiritual entrepreneurs, healers, and conscious creators, helping them launch and build their own wellness businesses and attract their soul clients. So thanks again for being here, and looking forward to spending this time with you guys tonight.
Thank you very
Now,
much.
do I get to call on someone else?
Yeah, I love that.
Trip.
Thank you, Corinne. My name is Trip Kramer. I'm a dating coach for shy men. Have been doing this for the past 10 years now. And I'm also a human, and I love working with other humans, and I love seeing men succeed. You know, I come from, basically, I like to say that I teach guys things that I wish I would have known when I first started into the dating world. There's a lot of guys out there who are shy and don't know how to talk to girls, and they want to be like everyone else, going on dates, getting into relationships. So I was that guy once, and I figured it all out. So now I'm here to help guys who are in the same realm. Thanks for having me, Ben. Heather.
It's my turn. Hi, everyone. I'm Heather Paradis out in Georgia. Wow. So I was a mental health therapist and got introduced into the online space and fell in love with it, really just from an impact perspective of how anyone could, really put their voice out there and care and really make a big difference in this world. So I decided to leave my regular job. Actually, before it started, I got 2 job offers, turned them both down, cried a lot, and jumped full into the online world, which I don't regret. It was hard. But several years later, here I am. I host a show called Unconventional Leaders, where I talk to leaders who are going against the grain and making a difference in this world, and really a community builder. I really want to give voice to people who don't feel seen or heard, and give them a platform. So work with a lot of content creators, people who have a message and want to make it heard online. And thanks for having me. It's an honor.
So I wasn't called on, but I guess that leaves me to go next. It's okay, Heather. We're all friends here. So Tomer Yogev, I'm here in Chicago. I'm an executive coach. I work primarily with entrepreneurs and startups. I was an entrepreneur, startup tech guy myself for a number of years, then dabbled in venture capital for a little while. And after that, started doing interim executive work at a number of kind of notable startups, mostly here in Chicago, but all over the world. And it was through that that really led me into becoming a coach. It was working with all these startups and these entrepreneurs and realizing how much they were dealing with the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual even. And that was oftentimes where I kept getting called in. It wasn't so much that they needed operational or sales help. They really just needed to help get out of their own heads. And so that was the work I started to do. Ended up getting myself certified as a coach to make sure I wasn't causing psychological damage out there because I wasn't a trained therapist. And so really haven't looked back. And so for most of the work I've done, I focused on sort of a positive psychology approach, generally oriented in strengths, but recently have pivoted into what we're now calling the big joy theory, where I and my wife are putting out our own model rooted in joy on how people can kind of leverage joy to inform their leadership presence.
Thank you all for such beautiful and succinct introductions. I could not have asked for a more diverse group of coaches. and it's what's so beautiful about that is I think too often, when we try to start a business or get into a field, we think that we can't build relationships with people that are also in the field. This is a symbol that, there is so much strength in building your network of people that are aligned with similar values and are in a similar industry as you as well. So I want to dive a little bit deeper into your experience. That's why we're here. So to start us off, I think I get this question a ton. I'm not sure if you do, but it's really, how do you even get started? So thinking of everything from certifications, websites, social media, incorporating, like it just, someone comes to me asking, how do I be a coach? And they have this plethora of kind of unchecked to-dos that they think they need to do. So what did you do? How do you get started? And really, I guess, how long did that take? So I think I'm going to turn this over to Trip.
Cool. Okay, so I'll say how I got started, because it's definitely going to be different for everyone depending on what kind of coach they want to be and what kind of value they think they can provide. So what I did, don't see this as the end all be all. There's many routes to go. But for me, I'm a dating coach for men. There's some certifications you can get out there, but they're not like official by any means. I mean, I guess I could have done a life coaching certification, but that is not exactly dating coaching. So I never really went that route. I focused on what value I had that I could provide. And then I had to prove to myself that I could provide it. So I never went into it thinking like, oh, I can be a coach. I can do this. It was more of like a question. Like I wanted to do it, but could I do it? That was my first thing. So I started helping people for free. So that was my way in. I actually put an ad on Craigslist. And Ben, you know this story. I told this at the last event. I put an ad on Craigslist where I was like, hey, I'm willing to help any guy out there who wants to learn how to meet women. And if you're shy and if you have problems with talking to women, let me know and I'll help you for free. I got one person who responded, and he was an awesome guy. And I took him out to a bar in Los Angeles and I helped him approach women. And long story short, after that night, he's said it was amazing. It was life-changing. He loved it. He learned so much. And we worked again. I gave another free session, but that was kind of enough. Like I was like at the edge of like, I think I can do this. Let me just see if I can. I coached someone through the process. And after that, it was off and running for me to give me enough confidence to start a business. This was back in like 2010, 2011, getting started. So I'll leave this to someone else if they want to answer the question too, because there's also like all these other starting questions like, well, how do you get started with your website and how do you get started with marketing and all those things? But I think the very first thing was, did I have what it takes to help someone make change in the area that I think I can help them in. And so once I knew I could do that, it was just, everything was technical from there.
I love what Trip just said. I couldn't agree more. I think especially if you're coming into coaching and you're not a trained therapist, right? You haven't had sort of that background where you kind of have that academic knowledge of what you're supposed to do when you're sitting across from a client and so on and so forth. Really getting in touch with that value that you're giving. And so, I actually just got asked this a little bit ago around who was my first client, and I sat there and like stared at the sky for solidly 5 minutes trying to think of who that would be. Because I would contend if you are looking at doing coaching for a living, you probably have already been doing coaching for a living. And you probably were coaching kids on the playground. You probably coached family members and friends, and you've been doing this stuff for free since forever. And that certainly was the case for me. But to kind of pick up on what Trip was saying, it wasn't until I was really confronted with all of these entrepreneurial clients I was working with as an interim executive, and how much coaching I just kept falling into doing, and then realizing, oh, wait, I'm actually like really helping these people more than even the operational stuff, right? Like I have this MBA and I'm using it, and I'm supposed to be bringing all this like business knowledge, but really what I was providing was much more coaching, psychological. And so for me, just because I need to get even further in touch with the fact that I was actually providing value, that's what led me down the certification pathway. But I also agree with Chip completely that, I have it. I don't think anyone has ever asked in all the years I've had it, though. So it was completely, for me, not necessarily because that's some sort of barrier to entry into the space.
Yeah, so I started in a completely different space. I was in financial services and a wealth consultant when I realized in 2010, 2011 that I didn't really like what I was doing that much. And at the same time, I was going through a lot of really hard life stuff. My job was really hard. I was being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. I had all kinds of things happening that were kind of building up and really stressful. And that was really where I discovered and started to lean on my meditation, my mindfulness. I didn't really know what else I wanted to do, but in those moments, I started to lean on the mindfulness, meditation, and all of these tools that I had learned. And they really helped me get through that time, which was when I started to become passionate about sharing what I'd learned with others. And so for me, it was kind of like a slow process from 2012 when I got my first certification to launching my business in 2016. I made a lot of money in finance. It was hard for me to leave. Everyone told me I would be stupid to leave such a great job. And, don't you love the security and the stability? And I was like, but my heart, it says something else. And so I made, a plan, a financial plan. I saved money. I got my certifications. I got all these things in a row to put myself in a position that I felt ready to make that leap. And so I'll agree with what both Trip and Tomer have said, that it's different for everybody, and only you can decide when the right time is and how to go about it. But when you're ready, just start taking action in whatever way you can. And little by little, consistent action day after day is where you start to see results. It doesn't all happen overnight, and that's okay.
So for me, I don't have any coaching certifications at all. I have the background of mental health therapy, but to be completely 100% honest with everyone, I got those because I felt so inferior to be able to help people. I went in, to school because I wanted to help people. So I thought having this would make me feel qualified to help people. That would make me feel qualified to help people. And I walk away, 7 years later with this piece of paper, which was great. And I learned a lot and I'm grateful for it, but I still didn't feel like I was qualified to help people. So then I thought, well, maybe if I get a certification from a coaching thing. And then I believe I even talked to you, Dr. Ritter, at one point where I was just like, well, maybe I need a certification here too. And I realized that there's just been this pattern in my life where I always feel like I need some validation in order to help people. And there is some, some wisdom in the sense of, as coaches, we need to be very clear of where someone needs therapy and we need to refer to a therapist versus coaching. Those are two very different things. However, we can kind of chase a lot of stuff without realizing that. I think, Tamara, you mentioned that when you're getting results for people, that's when you're ready. And when people are constantly coming to you with the same question and the same advice over and over again, there's a pattern there where that you can help these type of people. And results is all what it's about. Can I really get results for the individual? But yeah, it's kind of that imposter syndrome was real for me. It's really hard to get over.
I remember that conversation, Heather. I was actually outside. I was waiting to go into the gym, and we were talking about kind of next steps and, what do you truly need to be credible? And I think what's come out from all of your answers is all you really need to be credible is confidence and a belief in yourself. And I mean, you've talked about just start coaching, prove to yourself that you can, quiet your own judgment and quiet your fear of judgment from others. And that once you start believing in yourself and start practicing being a coach, then it may start evolving on its own. And I don't know if you guys had anything to add before moving to the next question.
I just wanted to add, it doesn't end when you charge that first client and you whatever, get to financial stability. Once you get into the coaching world, there's like certification on top of certification on top of, right? There's all these tiers you can get. There's all these new things. And, as Ben was talking about earlier, there's, all these snake oil salesmen trying to sell you something because you're not a good enough coach. You're not getting enough clients. You're not whatevering. And so you'll land where you need to land. You'll get the things you need to get to feel assured of yourself. But oftentimes I'll see people, I've been coaching for 20, 30 years. They've got 14 different certifications. They know every single assessment under the sun. And I'm just like, you seem incredibly talented, but also like incredibly insecure to me. Because at some point you just have to be like, this is my model and this is what I believe in. And I know I provide value. And somewhere in there, it's going to have to be good enough. Where that is for each person is different. But it doesn't just end because now you have 5 paid clients or something like that.
Yeah.
I'll go on top of that one. I'll say too, there's something that we have to kind of define here, right? There's stuff out there, like on one side, there's stuff out there that will certify you as a coach or teach you how to be a coach or be a better coach. So that's one avenue. But then the other avenue is there's stuff out there that you'll see, if we're talking about like snake oil salesmen or whatever, there's other stuff out there that teaches you how to start a coaching business. And so there's two very different things. This is just my opinion. I don't really believe that much in the certification stuff. I think anyone, I think to be a really good coach, you're going to be coaching for a long time. Like I think, I've been doing it for 10 years, my first 2 years versus 5 years versus now. I mean, it's night and day. I'm so much of a better coach now because of all the coaching I've done. I don't think any certification would have trained me enough. Plus, I'm very niche anyways. So I wouldn't focus on that. But there are some programs out there to teach you how to start a coaching business and be able to make money from the confidence and your ability that you already have. And depending, where you go for that, some of those are good because you're investing in learning how to, get leads and build a business. You're like, okay, now I'm the coach, but how do I actually coach? How do I get to the point where I have the access to coach people? So I believe in that stuff once you feel confident that you can coach. But the certification, I don't think it's really, it will do a little bit for you. I'm sure there's some value in there, or else there wouldn't be big businesses based on certifications. There's something in there, I'm sure, but it won't be as helpful as you just jumping in and doing it.
Yeah, I appreciate that add-on because I think we've all probably hired coaches And, if that's sales coaches, presentation coaches, marketing coaches, business coaches, even life coaches, relationship coaches, like it works, right? That's why we do what we do. So there may be certain things that you haven't been trained to do, like in terms of sales, right? So you hire a sales coach and all of a sudden now you're a master at sales, which is important to the success of your business. If you don't have the ability to sit down and basically go to school on these topics yourself, like I need to learn sales, so I'm going to get every single book I can find, I'm going to listen to every single video I can find, I'm going to go talk to experts, then you're not going to be an expert. So an easier way, right, is to get someone to help you get there yourself. And it looks like Corinne had something to add. Did you want to mute?
Yeah, well, I was just going to add that, I think it also depends a little bit on what kind of coach you are. So I agree that in life, a lot of life coaching and, business coaching, you're speaking from your own experiences. And we've all had that, hero's journey where we're able to teach from what we've learned and what we've experienced in life. But I know in my situation in particular, I coach in meditation and mindfulness skills and am a Reiki master. And those are things that I chose to incorporate into my practice or, well-being or nutrition. You can't just make up nutrition coaching. So it completely depends on what kind of, business you're looking to start. So just take that into consideration that there are, a lot of different ways to be a coach as well, in a lot of different areas that people need coaching.
Yeah, I think here, like you said, it depends. Look online, look for people that are doing what you want to do, look at their journey. Reach out to them, ask them their journey. And I'm sure you will find people that have all done it differently and find what resonates most with you. And I think that's a good way to kind of figure out some next steps. And a couple of us have hinted at sales and clients. And I know when I start working with people that are looking to enter into the coaching industry, the idea of selling themselves, the idea of getting their first client seems a universe away. So I'd love all of you to think back, and you kind of hinted at it, Tomer, in terms of like client generation and prospecting. How did you actually get your first client? And has that changed at all? So now how do you get your clients now too? And I'm going to turn this over to Heather first.
Sure. So I'm a big proponent of content marketing. I think content marketing is awesome. A lot of times people think that, oh, that means I can put out stuff and I'm just going to have clients and they're just going to be banging down my door. That's not really the right way to look at that. Instead, I think putting out your voice, whether it be through a podcast, a blog, live, stuff like that, builds a sense of trust with you. Having a client, especially within this space, is really building a relationship. You're entering into a relationship with someone and really getting intimate with them on all levels, because you think, well, I'm coaching on something like marketing or something like that. Well, guess what? When you really get in the weeds with people, they often think they have an external problem they need coaching on, but so much of it is this internal work that you're going to get to know these people super well. And so again, what you were just saying a moment ago, we've got to align with the coach that we're hiring, but also too, we want to be aligned with the clients that we're attracting. And I'm using the word attracting very intentionally here, because I really believe that the more that we can show up and share our story, share our messages, whatever way feels right to you, never a should, never like, oh, I should be starting a podcast because that's the hot thing to do, but instead aligning with what feels really good for you and true. The more you're going to attract the ideal client. I've had people reach out and say, I don't know what you do, but I want to hire you. Because they feel like they know me so well and so intimately, because I'm constantly sharing my story with them. And that's really difficult, because we have to get very intimate with our own story and be willing to share that and be vulnerable. But again, that builds that trust and that intimacy where they say, you know what, I trust Corinne. I've seen her. I hear her heart all the time. I've seen the results that she's gotten. I'm going to trust her with my time and my money, my resources, and my story, and work with her. So I think that's one avenue. And there's many ways. That's kind of the one that I'm most passionate about, is, sharing your story online and getting vulnerable. You want people to trust you. You have to go first and put yourself out there.
I love what Heather's saying. I think trust is really at the core of all of it. I mean, oftentimes I use the word legitimacy because I'm coming at it a little bit more from a business standpoint around, big part of the reason why entrepreneurs hire me as a coach for them is because I've been an entrepreneur. I've started the business, I've raised the venture capital, I've done all that same shit that they're dealing with. And so I can be that much more kind of empathic. And so, but it's that same element that we're talking about. They now trust me to be their coach because I've walked that path. So it still all really boils down to that trust. And one of the things I tell people kind of all the time, it really doesn't matter what you're selling. Think about how you buy. If you're a iPhone user, why is the next phone you're going to buy an iPhone? It's because you trust, like, you know what it is, you know how to use it, you trust it's going to work, it's good enough. And so it's the way you buy, it's the way everyone buys. So for you as a coach, I'll also echo what Heather said. I think putting your voice out there is really important. One, so that people can actually hear what it is you're doing and what you believe. But two, it's a tremendously powerful exercise for yourself to have to get all these ideas of what you think leadership or men's dating or whatever it is you're coaching on, you think stuff, it's all sitting in your brain, and having to put it down into black and white in a blog or actually use words and put it into a podcast, it takes some doing. And it really helps refine your thinking and get you clear on what it is you're really trying to do. So it serves a lot of really productive purposes. And it does initially attract. What I also caution, especially coaches around, is you got to be careful who you attract at the beginning. Because the worst thing you can have happen in your coaching practice is someone like, oh, I did coaching with Tomer. He was fine. Like, it was okay. That's the worst thing that you can have out there. You want your first 5-10 clients to be as gung-ho about you as that guy in the bar in LA with Trip, right? That, like, oh my God, this was amazing. And so that alignment and really thinking about what kind of coaching you're doing, who you're doing it with, who's a good client, what you're going to do with them, what are those measures of success, all of that stuff, those are the things you really want to get down pat. And so if you're doing the blogging or the podcasting or whatever, that's a really helpful exercise to get you there quickly.
I'll add to this. So I also do content marketing, very similar to what Heather was saying. So I market myself through a podcast, through a YouTube channel, a little bit on a blog, but my main source of marketing is through content, which is a very powerful way, because that means if you're doing content, that means you're on the internet, which means you have access to the whole world. So I know some people do more local marketing depending on what kind of coach they are and who they want to reach. I think no matter what, though, whether you're trying to do local or if you are trying to do local, you should still try to get yourself out there, because there's so much demand in the world, in the entire world, for whatever you have to offer. I've worked with people on every continent, and that's just because the internet, right, connects us all. So I'll say that. Also, I want to say, based on what Heather was saying and Tamara was saying, the idea of, so you guys are talking about this idea of what's called influential marketing, right? Is like, you got to be vulnerable and tell your story. So there's a quote that I really like that is really interesting, and it says, "We've never elected the best and qualified person by resume to be the president." And that kind of says something there. It's not so much about the qualifications as it is how they make you feel, right? How a person makes you feel. So sharing your personal story and being vulnerable, all that stuff helps, because people are going to want to work with you based on how you make them feel and your personality. And also into that formula, it's also, can you solve their problem? And one of the best ways that you can persuade or convince or allow someone to know that you can solve their problem is by giving your personal story. Giving your personal story actually gives you the authority to tell people how they should solve the problem, because you're basically saying, hey, I did it, let me help you do it. And that's very, very convincing in itself. So they can trust you. and then know that if they work with you, they're going to be able to get the result that they're looking for.
You guys are awesome. I agree with everything these guys just said. Just to add a little bit of a different avenue, because I know content marketing, which I also use, and it's what has brought me success. You know, my time on social media and content marketing and collaborations and those kinds of things. But it can be really overwhelming to know where to spend your time, especially when you're getting started. And there are so many different ways to put your content out there, and different avenues and different media platforms and all of this. So I would say the first thing that you need to know, the first three things you need to know, one is, who are you serving? Who is your ideal client? Because it's really easy to just try to like say yes to people that come to you, but you need to know they might not always be the right person for you. You need to know who you want to serve. And then you need to know what challenge that person has and what your solution is to help them solve that challenge. And I think once you know and have nailed down those three things, then you can start to think about, okay, well, if that's who my target market is, this is their challenge, this is the solution I'm providing. When you have those kinds of, you know, bigger initial things nailed down, then you can figure out, where are they spending their time? Where am I going to be able to reach them? And if you're speaking from a heart-centered place, like everyone's been talking about, if you're sharing your story, if you're getting vulnerable and you're speaking your truth and you're sharing everything, all the goods that you believe in, then you're going to naturally attract, and you're hanging out in the right places, then you're naturally going to attract your soul clients.
Corinne, you just triggered for me a great line that I got kind of early on, which is, think about who cares about who cares. And what I mean by that is, so I work with entrepreneurs. Theoretically, I could go around to 100 entrepreneurs and be like, hey, I'm a great coach, you should hire me, I'll help you, da, da, da. And, you know, maybe that will work. But a far more effective way for me to do my business, especially early on, is to go to entrepreneurial accelerators, go to venture capital firms, go to all these places, all the people who care about entrepreneurs. So I am trying to work with entrepreneurs, but oftentimes going on that direct approach, it's not to say it's unproductive, but it's slow and it's hard. And every yes you get is one client. Every venture capital firm I can get to buy into what I'm selling, that's 50 potential clients I might get to. So think about that based on, again, like Corinne was saying, who are you really trying to serve and what's the problem you're trying to help them with? Once you've identified that, if you can then get to another level above around who cares about helping those people solve that problem and kind of be in their quiver of solutions for that individual, that can be a really great way to kind of get some of those early clients, especially early on.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that. So I got my first clients not from content marketing or anything like that, because actually my brand online was different than where I was transitioning and aligning towards. I was not careful enough about where I started. So I had to spend about 1.5 years kind of rebranding completely and changing people's perspective of who I was and what area I coached in. So I got my first clients from speaking at live events. I would go to other people's events and speak, and I would host my own events, which in itself is kind of similar to, it's marketing it, but it's not putting out like evergreen content. But a lot of what we've all been talking about is, you know, really building trust and building a network. Because if you have a network that trusts you, and especially as Tomer was saying, if you can create, you know, those 10 fans of people that you've worked with initially, if they're free or paid or whatever, that is just going to expand exponentially as time goes on and as you're consistent and as you keep putting yourself out there. If it's creating content for a podcast, a YouTube channel, an event, etc., or meeting people at organizations and then filtering them into your newsletter or LinkedIn page where they can actually see what, you know, your credibility and your experience. It's all just related to building trust in a network. It all comes down to that. Do you guys have anything to add to that?
I do. I think there's building trust, and also too, I want to add keeping trust. There's a lot of, you know, it's exciting when you get clients and you build stuff, but I see a lot more posts about people booking clients, and I see posts about results from clients. And so getting clients is one thing, and a huge piece of marketing too is sharing client success. So figuring out too, once we engage in this relationship, that's just the beginning. Let's build upon that trust, even, through offboarding, where they can look back and we're really, they can do that marketing for you. Everybody knows word of mouth is the most powerful marketing tool, hands down, still, with all the social media platforms and everything. So being really, it should go without saying that, we all want to really get results for our clients, but, I feel like since coaching and online business is so sexy right now, it's just really more like, can I get more clients? Can I get more clients? As opposed to, man, how can I serve the ones that I have, honor them, and make sure they get the best results in the world? And I believe my business is going to be taken care of through that.
And picking up on what you're saying, Heather, yes to all of that. But whenever I hear this idea of networking when you're starting your business and coaching business, any business, I think the idea of like, you need to build your network is this sort of overwhelming, like you need 1,000 people to think you're amazing and refer business to you, or you're going to fit. And it's just not true at all. If I had to think about my network, really, it's 25 people, maybe. And of that, it's sort of the 80-20 rule. There's probably 5 of them that give me 80% of my business. So it's not this massively overwhelming thing that you just got to go to, networking after networking event, and print out 1,000 business cards. Even all these years later, that's just not it. You're not going to maintain that many strong enough connections that are going to feed you that business, other than, like what Heather was saying, developing client success and people who are out there who've worked with you, who've been like, this person was an amazing coach for me, they really helped. And now when they run into other people who are experiencing a similar problem, your name is the obvious one that bubbles up to the top. Other than that, networking, I think, is important because you never know where it's going to come from. And so you do have to do a lot of that kind of glad handing up front. But once you've figured out a handful of productive people in your network, it's not this thing that you just have to keep going and keep going and keep going. The content marketing and your successful clients will do the work for you at that point.
Thank you all for, your knowledge-filled answers. You can really tell that you guys have kind of put in the work, seen what works and what doesn't. And I really like your point that it doesn't take a lot of people. It really, if you look at my last year, like I can really count on one hand the people that made that year one of the best years that I've had. And the more I talk to consultants specifically outside of some of the other coaching industries that are being represented right now, sometimes it's just one client for years, for 10, 20 years, that basically creates their lifestyle. And it's not even referrals, it's literally that one big client. So keep that in mind when you're thinking, how do I build this massive business? Well, sometimes it just takes one person. So I'd like to ask all of you a more pointed question about selling, because it can be very intimidating for someone that has never sold anything before, right? If you've always worked for someone, technically I guess you've sold yourself for the job to get hired, but have you ever actually sold a service to someone? And you're like, would someone really buy my time? Buy my expertise? Is that possible? Well, we all know that it's possible, but I'd love for you guys to just give some general kind of selling advice or something, maybe something that you stand by in your business and what works for you. And I will call on Corrine first.
Could you be a little more clear on the question? Like what kind of answer you're looking for?
Yeah, if a coach comes up to you and wants to start a wellness practice and they go, I've never sold coaching before. How do I do it?
Well, you'll have to hire me for a coaching session to get the full answer. But in terms of a short answer, I think in general, when you are really honest with people, and you know what value you bring when you've already solved those other questions that I answered, when you know who you're working with, what their challenge is, and what your solution is. Those are the most important things you can possibly decide, because people are going to purchase from you because they have a problem and they need somebody to help them solve it. All right. You want to be able to paint yourself as the picture or the person that can help them get there. So when you go back to your own experiences, how you were able to see success, I think those are always good things to bring in. And then one of my top sales tools, I guess, that I've used over the years was something that I learned when I was back in financial services that more helped me with the mindset of sales and not getting down on myself if I didn't nail every client. So in finance, we use this, we just say 10-3-1, just a ratio that we use for the sales process, that for every 10 people that you reach out to, 3 of them may sit down and have an intro conversation with you or a first initial talk with you. And then 1 of them will likely become your client. Now, I'll tell you, I've been able to improve mine from there, but that's a really good base, kind of ratio to look at. And it helps you see all 10 of those conversations as a win and as a success and as something worth celebrating. And when you're getting started in this business, I think that's really, really important. Also remember that you get to be the decider in who you work with. And so, not to, keep repeating how important that ideal client persona is, but you really have to know who you want to work with in order to make this whole process happen. When you know exactly who you want to work with, you know how you can help them solve their problem and reach the same results that you have, then the rest kind of flows.
Yeah, that's that's pretty spot on there, Corrine. Definitely vetting for who's going to be a good client for you. I would just say that in the very, very beginning of starting, I would try to do as many of those. You said 10-3-1, so like 10 being like people who you would get on the phone with or have conversations with that could be interested. Obviously you want to try to make that number as big as possible. But yeah, at this point, because I've been doing it for so long, I kind of know if it's going to be a good client or not. I can tell fast the way that they either contact me or email me or fill out the application form. So I get on the phone with less people these days because I just don't want to waste my time, because I already know if they're going to be a good client, either for me or if it's someone I think is going to sign up. But in the beginning, I just would get on the phone or talk to anyone I could. Like, it didn't matter. Like, even if they weren't going to be, if I knew they were going to be a good client or not, just to get things going. I think even if they're not the most ideal client in the very beginning, it's going to build a little bit of confidence having someone that you're working with and paying you for your services. So I think it's okay to be a little bit more loose in the beginning of starting off and building up those numbers as much as you can. And then as depending on what kind of marketing you're doing, as your business grows and you're getting more leads and your roster is getting more full, you can be a little bit more picky on who you work with and then kind of vet from there. So that's what I've done over the years, and I've seen that work pretty well.
Forgive the tough love here, but whenever I run into people in any professional service that they really struggle with the sales part, what that says to me is that you either don't see or at least haven't gotten in touch yet with the value that you're giving. If you really understand what it is that you are doing and how you are impacting the people that you are serving, the selling is just a matter of explaining that to someone else. If you're worried about like, oh, I can't do what like the guy at the used car lot does, well, then you're doing it wrong. You don't want to be like that, right? It's not about like, hey, how can I get you into a coaching package today, right? Like that's not how this stuff sells. The way this stuff sells is you talk about what you've done, how you've impacted, what you believe. And people, again, goes back to that idea of trust that Heather brought up. They trust you and they choose to engage with you. And so if you're finding that scary, then that either means that you haven't figured out exactly what it is you're doing or you believe, or you haven't really gotten in touch with the value yet that you're giving. And so again, it's not like, well, tough shit, figure it out. But it's, you've got the work to do. This isn't a sales issue per se. This is a, do you understand the value of the service that you're providing issue? From there, the sales kind of naturally fall out of you.
So from my experience, and this is just me, I know everyone's so different. I had to deal with a lot, and I still see it creeping up sometimes, and it's a constant renewal of my thought process and retraining my brain, rewiring my brain, where when you grow up without money, sometimes there's a lot of negative connotations with money and what it means to be successful and what it means to charge. And, people are drawn to coaching and therapy and all these things. We're helpers. We love people. We want to serve people. And so rewiring, and when I say rewiring, I'm saying that intentionally because it is something that we have to train our brains to think differently, especially when we've spent years and years with habitual thought patterns. It's not an overnight thing. That's why constantly, and I know we're going to address this later, like, podcasts and courses and retraining your brain is so, so important, because I had to rethink the way that I looked at money and success, because there was almost a guilt that came with charging, because I just want to help people. And I hear that all the time from people. Well, Heather, I don't care about the money. I just want to serve and I just want to help. We all do, Jack. You know what I mean? But the thing is when you really care about client success, that there has to be a sacrifice on their end or they're not going to be invested. And so understanding that selling is serving when it's done for the right, for the right person. I had a stick-it note. I don't know where it went. It's somewhere around here where I wrote down, I am selling to my ideal client what they want and what they need. They're looking for solutions. They're either going to hire you or they're going to hire someone else. And if we really care about their success, we have to make sure that they are invested in their success, or they're not going to show up. They're not going to try. Trust me, I have story after story, but I think it goes back down to rewiring our brain and really addressing some deeper rooted issues within ourselves around money, success, and what that means.
What I'm hearing here is, you need to have trust in yourself. You need to know the problem that you solve. You need to know who you want to work with, so you know that problem a little bit better. The messaging they use, how they explain it, how they relate to it. And you need to know that the solution that they perceive as the solution, like what are they actually searching for right now? And it may not be what you actually offer, but it's the solution they think is what they need to find. You need to also know your numbers. So numbers meaning how many no's does it take to get to a yes? And if you haven't gotten to a yes yet, you're still counting. You got to make that a game. Can I get a no today? Can I get a number today? And how many numbers did I get this week? And I promise you, if you keep track of those numbers and aim just to get, those 20 touch points, and if they're yes or no, and you will learn from those touch points. You will learn how to really discover if your client is the right client, discover if they have the problem that you can solve, and discover if you can explain the solution in a way that makes them trust you and believe that you're the person they need to purchase from. Selling, like Tomer said, is really just having a conversation. It's just talking about what you know. I remember one of the best quotes I heard from someone in terms of selling for me that resonated heavily was, imagine you have $1 million and the person in front of you, like, you can just give them that $1 million. You're not going to lose anything. You actually are just going to give them that $1 million. And so in selling, like, that your solution can solve this person's problem, and you want to give them that $1 million, that solution. Like, they should take it, right? Wouldn't an insane person take $1 million? So how can you perceive of what you have to offer as that valuable? I'm sure someone else, does anyone have anything to add?
I'll say something on the idea of like feeling guilty charging the amount, that is the value of what you have to offer. I mean, can we talk about doctors for a second? They actually save lives. People are going to die without their help, and they're very expensive, but we don't bat an eye at that, right? And at the same time, because I remember once, and this got to me, this was like a few years ago, some guy DM'd me and he said, how dare you charge you should be helping people for free. I mean, it was just a bunch of nonsense. And it bothered me for a little bit, but then I realized, like, no, that's not true. If I help everyone for free, then I can't have food in my body. I can't have shelter. And so then I'll suffer, and then I'll go away, and then no one will get help. So where does that end, right? So you should charge. I think probably most people are undercharged or undervaluing themselves and undercharging. And you got to realize that, the value that you have, because all coaches really, in any means, are really changing lives. It's worth more than you will charge, and that's fine. You'll never charge the actual value. Like, can you put a price on, I don't know, getting a job, or can you? I guess you technically can, but still, you get what I'm saying. Can you put a price on getting a girlfriend? Can you put a price on the nutrition advice you're going to get for losing or gaining weight? Like, it's probably very, very high. So you'll never charge that much, but whatever you're going to charge, it's absolutely going to be worth it. And if that person doesn't realize that, they don't see the value of it. Half of it's their problem, but back to the selling aspect, half of it is your problem. Your job as a person selling what you're doing is you need to make them understand the value of what it is that you have to offer. So I always say to myself, if I ever get off of a call with someone who's not interested in coaching, you can play victim mentality and just go, well, they're an idiot. They don't realize how important this is, or whatever. But that's not going to get you anywhere, right? So you got to bring it back to yourself and go, I always say to myself, nope, I should just do a better job next time, and always do better at explaining to them the value of what I have to offer so they understand it and become a client.
And I also just want to add, and Heather touched on this, money is also skin in the game. I have a peer, I don't necessarily endorse this, and I would not do this, but this is what he does. He has $1,000 lunches. And the reason why he does that is he goes, listen, if you're going to pay $1,000, you are going to show up. You are going to make sure that in that lunch, you are going to get value, and you're going to do the work. You're going to do the prep. You're going to do the work after. And on the flip side, as the coach, I know $1,000 is a crazy amount of money. I'm going to show up. I'm going to make sure I give you great, like, I'm not going to come in half slept and over caffeinated. Like, I'm going to make sure I come to that lunch correct. And so I'm not endorsing everyone go out there and start charging $1,000 per hour. But what I am saying is that there is a positive effect that money does introduce. And if I were to look back on some of my coaching clients, there's no doubt the ones that I've given away for free because they were a friend of a friend, or a this or a that, and those, for the most part, are some of like my least successful engagements, because there just wasn't that same skin in the game. I wasn't as into it, if I'm to be totally honest. They weren't as into it. And so the amount of work and real energy that gets put in, and if you're doing coaching, you're going to need energy. You're trying to change behavior. You're trying to break old patterns. And that requires a lot of energy and tenacity. And so sometimes that money can be a really positive driver towards that on both sides.
Yeah, great points, great points. I want to move this a little bit more towards your structure and the format that you use for coaching. A lot of people come to me when they're asking about coaching, and they really just say, well, how am I a coach? Like, what do I have to offer? How do I coach? So can you speak a little bit about how you developed kind of your style or your format? Because I think anyone that's trying to build a coaching practice might think that that's something that's like outside of their capability and experience. And let's push this to Trip first.
Similar to what Corrine said when you asked the last question, can you ask again so I can understand better what we're looking for in this one?
Yeah, of course. So for example, I have the 3 C's of self-leadership. I have the LIVE system, which started my coaching business. I have a couple different models, and then also how I even work with clients. I work with clients once a week through Zoom. I have Voxer for communication midweek, and all this stuff, this developed for a reason. This came from somewhere, and I'm curious where yours came from.
Okay, so it's like a combination of, was it like what, like I have my formula, but then I have also like how often I work with them or what I do to get them results. I guess I'll just say all of it. So I work with people. What I do is this is refined from also for many years of what worked for me, doing weekly calls. I specifically keep them to 45 minutes. I've noticed an hour, it rarely ever goes an hour. And similar to a therapist, they do 50 minutes because they go clients back to back and they need that 10 minutes to like go to the bathroom and get a drink of water and things like that. So I've noticed 45-minute calls are perfect. And I also, and this is very specific to what I do, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this for other people, but I have where they can text me with questions in real time for anything going on, for any like mini emergencies or things like that. So they have a lot of access to me, but I also, it's a lot of value there because I get all that access. So we do it like that. And it depends on how long they want to work with me. So I have several different packages. So there's like a 3-month, there's a 6-week, there's a 6-month, there's a full year. And I've always learned people get a little paralyzed when there's too many options and then it's hard to pick. So you want to give them as few options as possible. I try my best to follow that rule, but it's really hard because I like to offer a very, very big package. And most people don't take it, but some do. And that's really good because then I get a client for like a full year, for example. So I have 3 relatively smaller packages and then one big one for that person who just wants to go all the way with it. So I have about, 3-4 packages. And then in terms of my system, for me, it's all about defining where they're at. So I get really good at defining where they're at on the first call. And usually in my line of work, guys fall into a couple categories. Either 1, they're not dating anyone, so they want to figure out how to start dating. Either 2, they're dating, but they're not really getting past a few dates, so we have to work on that. Or 3, they're in a relationship already and they need some help with that, or they're close to a relationship and they're trying to seal the deal with the relationship with someone they've been talking to for a long time. So all of my all my course and all of my information and my coaching will help them depending on exactly where they're at. And I don't even really state it to them in that way. This is actually stuff I just know in my own head. I don't go, okay, you're at level 1. So what we'll do with you is da, 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 da. Everyone wants the same result. They want to date more women. They want to get into a relationship. So they're all looking for that. And I know in my head, I'll get them there depending on where they're at. It's just going to be, we'll be working on different things, which will then present to them on the first call.
So for me, it's a little bit different. What I would say is you really have to look at kind of what has worked. Right? And this goes back to the idea of that I was saying before, that you've probably been coaching for years, even though you maybe didn't think of it in that way. But what has worked? What has made it productive? What is it you believe that you then impart on other people that allow them to develop and grow and be successful, or whatever it is that you're doing with them? The more you can understand that, the more you can kind of start whittling that down into packages. And one of the things I push on a lot of coaches is to try and productize the offering. And so that coaching inherently is kind of ambiguous. There oftentimes aren't like super obvious milestones of success. Like with Trip, if I'm getting more dates, if I have a steady girlfriend, I got married, whatever, right? Like those are clear markers of success. In my world, that's not quite as obvious. Not every entrepreneur I'm going to work with is going to get to a $1 billion valuation. So I'm not going to sit here and try and promise that. So I have to look at what has worked as far as kind of methodological approach, and then build that around for each person. So the way that I generally work is there's a handful of sessions that we usually do in quick succession to kind of lay the groundwork, kind of this new way of thinking, new way of leading, how develop the language that we can share as coach and coachee. And then from there, I usually meet with my clients only once a month, sometimes once every other month, and some even only just quarterly. Because the idea is once we have sort of that frame for you to then go out and operate in, now it becomes a matter of checking in. Okay, what's going on in the business today? How do we apply this frame to this particular issue or this new executive on the team or whatever it may be? So, so for me, it's not as quick. Maybe I'll meet weekly on those first couple of sessions. And when I say first couple, it's like 3 to 5, depending on kind of how fast we can kind of get through the material. And that's dependent mostly on them around kind of how much I have to break old mindsets to get into the new one. But then once we're there, it's a little bit more slow and steady. And just to kind of pick up on your 45-minute, I totally agree on the breaks. One of the big mistakes I made was going like back to back to back. And you know, that first day that I had like 5 clients back to back, I was like, yeah, I made it. And my like 4th and 5th sessions were just like garbage because I was swamped. So definitely give yourself a little bit of break. And the way I do it is I schedule them for an hour. I put half an hour in between, but with the understanding that I'll usually go over because I'm loquacious, as most people have already figured out about me on this panel. So I usually end up going 115, 120, and then I still have my 10 to 15 minutes before the next one if I need it.
Mine's very similar to these formats. I think the main difference with me is I love acuity and automation and all that stuff. I could automate dinner. I would automate it. Like I love automation. So what I do is when I get a new client, I go in and I create a new calendar and an acuity, and I let them schedule their own calls. And I don't say it has to be, because everybody is so different. And I think that's what's so tricky about all this is you're going to have one client. It's like, I need you every week. And other one's like, oh, you know, once a month's cool. You know, I just need to work through some stuff. And being able to adapt as a coach is so important because we're here to serve. So kind of an integrative approach, not only to with like your method within coaching, but also to how you lay the format, I think it's good for a little flexibility there. So I go in my calendar and I schedule my times I'm available. I give them a link and say, listen, this is how many, similar to Trip, you know, how many months are we working? How many weeks together are we working? This is how many sessions we have. You can schedule with any time frame within 6 months, whatever it may be. That way we don't have to talk about holidays and all this stuff, or, you know, I have to go pick up my Aunt Margaret, whatever. They can go in, they can reschedule, do all of that stuff. Another thing I wanted to add was how important the intake and offboarding is. I think starting off the relationship with really clear expectations of what this looks like, because everyone has a different expectation of what it means to be your coach. And although access to you is so amazing, and I do the same thing, Trip, we also too want to make sure that people understand boundaries and they're not calling you at midnight or texting you and stuff like that. So saying, what does this mean? What does support look like for you right now? And establishing those boundaries at the beginning. This is also really, this is not mine. This is a marketing coach I worked with. When you have an intake of a form, like how do you feel in this area and that area, and walk me through some of this. Guess what? That's some awesome copy for a landing page next time you're reworking your landing pages. Do you feel overwhelmed, blah, blah, blah? You know, they're giving you the language of what they're feeling and experiencing, your ideal client. And so being able to use that to inform your marketing moving forward is really great. And then the last thing I'll say is the offboarding process, going in and reworking some things you learn. Of like, oh, you know, well, around week 3, 4, you know, they're really, there's a lot of stuff coming up or whatever. What can I do to go back in and kind of rework my program, what I'm doing to support that? So asking how it went for them at the end. It's kind of scary because you're like, oh, was this great? I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. But getting that feedback super critical.
I know we're getting a little short on time and have more questions, so I'll keep this really quick because I agree with everybody else. I structure mine. I have a couple different program options. Usually to start, you wanna start with one, but especially what Heather was saying about boundaries, I think that's one of the most important things. And knowing your own boundaries and what you can commit to I recently made a 12-week, I'm not working with people I used to be too flexible. And I had my 12-week program, my 6-month or longer. But then I was letting people do like a 4-week booster program and, try to quickly onboard somebody. And it didn't really work for me or for them because I wasn't able to provide my true value. And so, the satisfaction then on both ends, I felt like there was more that I wanted to give and provide. And then on their end, I'm sure there was more, that they needed to actually have a successful start. So I had to set that boundary with myself too. Okay. Like I'm going to have my clients, commit, the only way to work with me is if you're willing to commit to 12 weeks in your success, that you're worth it and you're going to see the results that way. So those are some things that you learn in practice, and it's okay to try things out and change it later too, especially when you're getting started out as a coach.
Yeah, I've changed my structure and format. Yeah, and pricing even. You test things out, you see if it works, and it's important once you figure out something doesn't work for you, that it drains you. It's okay to set boundaries and say no. That means that client isn't right for you. I think too often people that are just starting out in coaching, they have this kind of open door policy. Everything and anything goes. You want to take a call at 3? Sure. You want to take a call on my mom's birthday? Sure. Anything is just like all of a sudden now you just feel like there's a scarcity mindset. And so what you need to do is actually create that scarcity mindset for your clients. Sorry, I only work at these 3 different blocks during the week. These are the expectations I have for my programs, and you need to figure out what works for you. Some people have really, really, really like intense cancellation policies. I don't have that severe of a cancellation policy. So like really what works for you and your business, what feels good inside you, what might cause a little bit of discomfort, because that means that it might be an area to pay attention to. But I want to also make sure we have some time for some questions. And I know we're running down short of time. You guys have all covered some incredible content so far. But I've been watching the chat box, by the way, and a couple of questions have come up about COVID. And so has COVID impacted your business at all in terms of how you meet clients, I guess success or not success, and how have you been finding opportunity during this time? And I'll turn this over to Corinne first because she unmuted.
Yes, because I want to say now is the absolute best time in the world to start a coaching business. People need coaching. People need support. People need encouragement to be lifted up. And as coaches, it's your role to be that support and that beacon of light for others. So I think it's the best time to be in business. And luckily, I was actually already an online, fully online coach. So that part was pretty seamless for me. And I've actually had more success in the last few months than the 6 months prior. My business has actually grown during COVID because of that. So having the online capabilities there from the beginning, I think is a really good idea. But let anyone else chime in.
Yeah, I have a mix of clients, local as well as remote. Obviously the remote ones, nothing changed, but I was meeting over web video anyways. And then the local ones, it was a pretty easy transition. So as far as, the bigger things, I don't know, the workshops, the speaking engagements, those sorts of things, obviously those, I'm not going to even say got canceled. They really just got delayed. A lot of them are just ramping up now with a lot of people going like, hey, that thing we were going to do in March or April, can we do it July, August, whatever, even if it's virtual or what have you. So a lot of that stuff is already coming back from a business perspective. But the individual one-on-one coaching, which is predominantly what we're kind of talking about here, that was not terribly affected. It'll be interesting to see once for me anyways, once business budgets get kind of rejiggered for post-COVID realities, if there will be as much for personal and executive development. So I may still kind of get hit later on, but at least for now, everything has been pretty unaffected.
For me, I have a different type of coaching business. So, my whole business is people meeting people. And right now that's just not as popular. So for me, because of work in dating, there's been a little bit of dip. So not as many people have been interested in either signing up, but really it's not that I've had less people signing up as much as the leads have dropped a little bit. Cause I think people are, why should I get coaching to meet and try to meet women and date when no one's going out and people are scared to be around each other. So I've seen a little bit of a dip, but it hasn't been too bad. It's just I've noticed it compared to the averages of other months. So nothing scary for me. I know that things will come back to normal. But yeah, it hasn't been too crazy. It was a little scary there for a second though, because I did realize, like, okay, who's going to want to sign up for coaching if they can't actually go on dates, and where is there to go on dates? But that's already starting to come back a little bit. So that's just specific to my business though.
I don't have much to add besides it's just, if anything else, just increased as everybody's going more digital. So I think positioning your messaging is really important, though, acknowledging what's going on in the world and figuring out how does it meet the needs now with what's going on is really important. But yeah.
Yeah, to mirror what everyone said, now is a very good time to start a coaching practice for a variety of reasons, probably more than I can list at the moment. And also, like, if you're measuring your coaching practice just week by week or month by month, then you're going to be disappointed. I mean, I've had lulls, and if a service-based business, especially with coaching, there are big swings and then big dips. So it's important to remember that even something that happens in the external world, like a universe, like a world pandemic, global pandemic, the dip you might see from that, or the increase you might see from that, like, it still means that you have to just stay consistent, do what works. And if something's not working, then you can try to pivot a little bit, alter your messaging, try a new avenue. I mean, I did a lot of in-person events. Now I did all virtual events. Do they have the same conversion rates, et cetera? Do they have the same audience? Actually, they've had a greater audience. So just staying aware of what's working, what's not working, how that relates to kind of those numbers that we talked about before in terms of sales can just keep you afloat and can keep you positive and feeling good about what you're putting out in the world. I want to ask you guys, because in the chat box I saw a question about, do you offer any products or services? Because especially when the world is hit, maybe people don't have the same financial means, right? They maybe have lost their job. Maybe you need a lower priced offering, or maybe there's something, maybe just you want to create passive income. So did any of you have any other products or services that you offer as a coach? And I'll pull this over to Heather. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have mastermind groups, course. I've had membership sites before. I think it's a fantastic thing to include in your offerings. If someone doesn't have the ability to pay your coaching prices, and also to warming up that relationship too, where they can trust you even more. Maybe like, maybe I don't know if I want to hire you as a coach, but I went through your program and this has actually really helped me. So yeah, I've dabbled in all three. Currently, right now, I have a mastermind and a membership.
Yeah, I think any mechanism of passive income, even if it's writing a book and getting some book royalties and things like that, is where you want to get to as a coach. Because one of the kind of the downsides of being a coach is an hour work is an hour paid, and you want to go on vacation for a week, like, that's great, you're making $0 that week. So figuring out other mechanisms, even if it's only generating $50, $100 a week, whatever, at least when you went on vacation for a week, you made $100. That's something. So keeping an eye on that, I think, is really important. I would not necessarily encourage people who are launching a coaching practice to spend too much time on that. It's something you want to look towards. It's something you definitely need to get to in time, but it's not a prerequisite to start getting out there and selling those hour-by-hour coaching sessions.
I'm looking over at, okay, Corinne, awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to add, one of the areas I've had a lot of success. Well, first of all, I really agree with what Tomer said about, not trying to do too much when you're just getting started. So if you already have an established practice and you're looking for ways to deepen or continue to grow, it's a great long-term plan. And you do want to have other ways of creating passive revenue for yourself. One of the ways I've had a lot of success is collaborating with other brands. So I would, think who you would naturally, like, what you're naturally recommending or maybe doing for people. And it's going to depend a lot on the kind of coach that you are. So using myself as an example, as a wellness coach, I find there are a lot of things that I'm recommending that people do, or even, I get into things like diet sometimes. And so even, having a high vibe, diet is something that is covered in part of my coaching. And there are certain companies that I've partnered with that I recommend their products or things that I was already recommending. And then I thought, oh, hey, I'll reach out to them and see if maybe they can offer my clients a discount. A lot of them were like, oh yeah, and on top of that, we'll also offer you a kickback. So now the same products that I was always recommending before for free, I now am able to recommend to my clients. They get a huge discount on the product. I get a little bit of a kickback. So it's, some recurring revenue over time. And the company is happy because, everybody's happy. It's win-win-win. So when you're thinking about adding those other layers of revenue, really consider what are you already doing that you can make more use of, rather than trying to rebuild the wheel and, do too many things that are outside of it. It should flow nicely with what you're already spending your time on.
In terms of offering other things, what I'd recommend to anyone starting a coaching practice is get your services off the ground first, because you're gonna make more revenue that way. Because coaching is more high priced than offering something like a course. So I do have products which are just information courses, and highly recommend. And someone actually asked them, they're like, "What was your biggest failure as a coach?" And I think it was not creating my online courses soon enough. But still, I think I would have what I would have done in the past 9-10 years is get the coaching off the ground like I did, but then in like year 2 or year 3, when there was a good amount of revenue and clients coming in, start creating some courses and then making revenue that way, because that is going to be your safety net. Whereas, you can have that as passive. So people are buying that. And once they buy it, you don't have to do anything because it's not a service. So you can make revenue that way. And then if there's ever a time, i.e. like now, where I know you guys are doing great. Fantastic. Congratulations. I took a small dip. So it was nice where it didn't hurt me that bad because I still have other things that I'm selling. So just because people weren't signing that up for much coaching, I still had courses that people could purchase and get in that way. So absolutely. The thing is as a coach, you have information. That's what people are buying. They're buying your information, and you can deliver that in coaching, but you can also deliver that in product and course form. So absolutely encourage people once they start getting things. And I don't mean like you have to be making tons of money and your coaching practice has to be huge, but once it's pretty stable and it's paying the bills and it's making you the living that you need to get going, start creating those courses, because that's going to be another piece of revenue that's going to be good for the biz and it's going to reach more people.
What I love about that too is if you spend time just solidifying your coaching practice first, what people are resonating with. If you try to create this, all-on course and write a book even, and you haven't actually worked with people and they haven't paid you money, then how are you sure that your message is actually going to resonate? So your coaching practice can automatically develop into products if you position things, in a way that your efforts work for you, right? So all your newsletters could become a book. All your podcasts could become some sort of audio product. Any sort of virtual events. So anything that you're doing, think about, well, how could this benefit me potentially in the long term and potentially also become a product? So I want to move into the close because we are near the end of our event. Thank you all. I would love for all of you to share, and Trip, you just did it, kind of maybe one of your biggest failures, because it was in the chat, and what you learned from that. And then also, of course, how our panelists can find you, how they can track you down. They can ask you more questions, maybe hire you, check out your content. So let's turn this over to Tomer.
Sure, I can talk about failure all day long. So yeah, no, the one that stands out to me is I was pretty early on to coaching, probably a year or so in, still at that very kind of hungry stage where like, you want coaching? Like, yeah, sure, I'll coach you. I just taken anyone and everyone in. And I got a referral from actually an ex-girlfriend referred someone that she knew to me for coaching, very much just trying to be, friendly and supportive and send this person along. And I jumped all over having this person as a client. And it was just a terrible match. Like there's just no reason at all I should ever have been coaching this person. And all the signs were there, personality wise, the issues they were trying to solve aren't really what I do. My entire frame was like essentially nonsensical to this person. And it was a shit show. So we had like maybe 3 sessions. And by the end of it, he just wouldn't call me back, and rightly so. He thankfully caught on to the fact that this was a bad match faster than I did. So it goes back to a lot of what we were talking about before, and it's entirely my error that I wasn't clear enough on what I do. I hadn't communicated that clearly enough to my ex-girlfriend to make an appropriate referral. I didn't set the boundaries appropriately, as Heather kind of laid out with the client around the expectations and what we're going to do here and what success looks like. And so kind of all the things we just said in the last hour and a half around, like, make sure you don't do, I did all of them. And that's what played out. It was a really bad engagement, but it really boils down to that lack of understanding around what it was I was doing, the value I was trying to impart, and making sure I was communicating that clearly. First and foremost to myself, then to my network, then to my clients.
And how do we find you?
Thank you. So Big Joy Theory. So go to bigjoytheory.com, or you can find Big Joy Theory on Facebook, LinkedIn, Insta, and then there's not too many Tomer Yogevs running around. So, although there is one in New York, oddly enough. Anyways, but if you pretty much just Google my name, I come up on all sorts of different things. But if you're looking for the coaching stuff, it's under Big Joy Theory.
I'll talk about failure too, for sure. Definitely to Tamara, what you were talking about is that expectation piece. I think it was one of my very first or second clients I was working with. Towards the end of our agreed upon time, I could sense that she was just really frustrated and angry. And so I was like, what's going on here? Talk to me. And I guess she had, and I don't remember exactly what it was, but an expectation that we were going to address something else within her business that we didn't cover. And we had to talk about that. And I'm like, okay. And it was my job to constantly be educating on what I do and setting those clear expectations at the beginning. And I didn't do that as clearly as I should have, where, kind of what you were saying, you just want to work with people and you get excited and all this, but really understanding, okay, at the very beginning, I am not a do-all person. This is what I do specifically, and this is what to expect. Luckily, we were able to amend that, and it worked out okay, but it really made it clear to me that I've got to be a lot more intentional with expectations at the very beginning and checking in with them. As far as where to find me, I'm at Heather Paradis pretty much everywhere, except LinkedIn. I'm not on LinkedIn right now. And I'd just love to connect with y'all. So send me a DM, say what's up. What do you got going on in the world? And I'd love to hear about it.
Does that leave me or Trip? No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'll go last.
Okay. Yeah, failure is an integral part of success. So we're all going to have lots of stories to tell you about failure and how they led to our growth in the long run, right? For me, something that, I still struggle with this sometimes, but the biggest failure I had at the beginning of my business was trying to do too much and saying yes to too much. And it split my attention and my energy in too many different directions. So that's why now my coaching themes that you'll see are really around getting completely confident and completely rock solid secure in who your target client is, what challenge you help them solve, and what solution you provide. Because if you don't have those things nailed down, it's really easy to, have that monkey mind and be able to just, go where the tide takes you and not be the decision maker or the creator and designer of your ideal life and your ideal business. So don't be afraid to say no, I guess. That's continues to be where I get myself into trouble if I say yes to too much. And where to find me. I'm actually going to type it in because it's misspelled a lot. So bear with me while I try to use the chat box from my iPhone while in Zoom here. It's artisanpharmacy.com, and it's also Artisan Pharmacy on Instagram, but it's spelled a little bit different. Let's see, artisanpharmacy.com. Pharmacy is spelled, it's like a play on words, Farmacy, like a farm, rather than the Pharmacy. So I like to put that in there. So there's my website. You guys can also link through to my social media from there. And I'd love to connect with you. Just send me a chat and let me know you were on this call. And yeah, I'd love to connect. All right, Trip, kick us off or wrap us up.
Okay. Yeah. So I said one of the failures. Another thing is, just getting, I like to say progress over perfection. There's too many times when I try to do something perfect, and it was just better to get started, because nothing is ever going to be perfect when you first start something. So that could be any little part of the business, anything you're trying to do. It can be starting the business at all. Maybe many of you are thinking of even starting and you haven't yet. You're not going to get it perfect. It never happens. So just start it, and then you tweak from there. And another thing is, and this is what I'm trying to do all the time, is learn from your mistakes. It's such a simple one, but we'll repeat the same mistakes over and over and over and over in our business. And so you should literally write them down. Like when something happens and you realize, you know what, shouldn't do that anymore. That was a mistake. Write it down and have a document so you can go back and see it. So you can actually see, oh, you know what, there's another new thing coming up here, like a new opportunity or something going on. I made this mistake last time. Let's not do this again. So, that was a big thing for, I have a business partner. And so we're constantly talking about that. Like, let's not go down that road again. We already tried that, and let's not make the same mistake we did last time. And that's going to make you successful faster. So if you want to check out my stuff, you can go to tripadvice.com. Trip is with 2 P's. And that's my website and the hub for everything on there. If you want to connect with me on social media, all the links are right there at the top at tripadvice.com. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I would say that my biggest failure was continuously investing in a brand that was misaligned with me. When I first started coaching, I was a very different coach. And after a very short amount of time, I knew that. But I just kept doubling down because I was making money. And it led me to a lot more problems later on in my career. It took me a lot of time to rebrand. You can find me, just Google Dr. Benjamin Ritter. You can actually connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm sharing a screen right now with all our speakers' information. You can take a snap of that. I'll also be sending a newsletter with this information. Funny story, I know we're running out of time, but so I met Tomer because I ran into his students at an event, chatted with the students. They told me that I need to meet their teacher. I then reached out to the teacher, who is this awesome, amazing coach and a person, and connected and started that relationship. Trip, I met through a Facebook group. And then when I was in LA, we met up. Corinne and Heather, I believe both of you, I met through LinkedIn, but through people that I met through LinkedIn as well and connected with. So it's incredible what can happen in your life if you actually just take the first step and try to connect with somebody. So these are our coaches. Reach out and connect with them. And thank you all so much for being here. And watch your inbox. Check your junk mail if you don't see it by tomorrow. We'll include all the follow-up information from our coaches and some extra tidbits as well. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks,
For having
Ben.
us all. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone, for coming.
Thank you, everybody.